finish up on the agriculture thing to make sure that it won't affect your own children, but it will affect you hiring your neighbor's children. And so, but either way, I don't think it's the right policy. The one thing we need to have is we're in one of the largest dairy producing districts in the U.S. In the current shape of the district, Wisconsin's 8th congressional district is the 8th largest milk producing district out of 435. We keep talking about family farms and how important they are to our culture, to our history, and our future. We ought to be doing things that would encourage young people to get into dairy farming and into producing our food. It's exactly the wrong approach. Anyone really believe that a farmer wants to have the 17-year-old kid next door hurt? I mean, it's ridiculous on its face. And farmers have gone to extreme measures to make their farms more and more safe every single year. And so we'll see what we can do to kind of push this back a little bit. We can have safe farms, and we can have young people working on them. Yeah. And as someone who, when I was 16, was milking 45 cows twice a day, I know you can do it safe.
Do that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Budget.
Yeah.
We're involved in the largest economy in the world, and we haven't had a budget in 3 years.
Yeah.
We're out of control. What are you going to do about it?
You're not going to have a budget this year either. The House will pass a budget. The law required, by the way, 1974 Budget Act was a law signed by the President of the United States that required, and it was agreed to by the House and the Senate, signed by the President, that requires a budget be passed every year by April 15th. The Senate hasn't done it. And so the question isn't what am I going to do, because we're going to pass a budget in the House. The question is, what are the sovereign American leaders going to do? And who's the sovereign? Who's the sovereign in this room? You all are. And so you need to demand, the American people need to demand from the United States Senate that they pass a budget. It is their obligation, and you ought to demand Attorney General Holder to require them to. He's the chief law enforcement officer in this country.
That's the problem.
And so what happens when the government doesn't do what the people want?
Yeah.
The people change those citizens and put them out of office. And that's what needs to happen. Now, we'll pass a budget, and we're working hard at that, but that's not an easy task. $3.5 trillion, we're running deficits, trying to find a way to reduce spending and increase revenue. Those are not easy challenges. And but we're going to pass a budget because I believe that budgets speak to values. In fact, if any of you are willing to let me look into your personal finances, into your checkbook, I would know a lot about your values. What you really thought was important, how you spend money says something about you. How much money do you give to charity? What type of car do you drive? Where do you spend on dining? Those types of things speak to your own personal values. In the same way, government, its budget speaks to values. And a United States Senate that doesn't pass a budget is valueless. You deserve better. So go seize it. And put people in the United States Senate that will pass a budget. Now, in fairness, Republicans weren't so good at it when they had all three levers either. But then the American people changed it, didn't they? They did. So.
Yeah. I bottle and deliver water. It takes gas. And then I hear you say, Mr. Ribble, and I know it's not you I'm directing this to, unfortunately. We need to do something with the gas price.
The question is, he delivers water for a living, and to deliver water requires the use of gasoline. Often not in the most fuel-efficient vehicles, I would imagine, just by virtue of the fact you carry heavy things.
Yes.
Gas prices are a problem. And the government has failed you. The president has failed you. We have tried in 3 different places to expand the amount of capacity from a very friendly ally up in Canada, so we're less dependent on the disruption that occurs in the Middle East. There's a lot of things that drive prices of gas. One of the biggest drivers is the reduction of the value of the U.S. dollar. Because all oil is purchased in dollars. Another big factor is the fact that we're not expanding refining capacity. You can't just put crude oil in your car and drive it. We have low refining capacity. We're not bringing crude oil in from Canada through a pipeline, and without regard to what the president said about the pipeline. He said, I'm not going to do this because the Republicans put an arbitrary date on me. And he kept saying, 60 days, not enough time. They've been working on this permit for 3.5 years. 60 days is the 20th time. But the president doesn't want to tell you is that he has an arbitrary date. And his arbitrary date, in my opinion, is November 7th, the day after his election. At that point, he'll throw the environmentalists under the bus, just like he's now throwing labor under the bus. And in fact, throwing the American people under the bus, forcing you to have higher prices. And he will say, well, supply and demand is not the issue. I will guarantee you if tomorrow he turned the spigot on the National Reserve, gas prices would go down. Because he'd be shoving supply into the system. He said last week in a speech that if we would have more fuel-efficient cars and raise the standards, demand would go down, the price would go down. So he's admitting on the one hand that supply and demand is driving the price, and on the other hand he's denying it, depending the audience is on. We need to know the truth. The government ought to be reducing our dependency on Middle Eastern and Venezuelan crude. We ought to be getting our own oil that we've got in plenty of reserve here in the United States soil and with a very friendly ally to our north. And we ought to be expanding refining capacity in this country. You shove supply up, and you'll take the price down. And I'm supportive of all those things. He talks about all-in energy policy. Well, this is all-in. That's my take. Not everyone agrees with what the president does. We've tried to get him to pass the pipeline, and it was amazing that the president of the United States stepped in last week and was calling senators, U.S. senators himself, to try to kill that vote, that those votes would have happened in the Senate. He had not interfered. His own party would have demanded it.
While he was making those calls, Jay Carney was lamenting the fact that the issue was being politicized.
Yeah,
I know. I mean, the man is too busy researching algae, inflating underinflated tires, and prescribing different type of light bulbs for us. That's his energy program.
Welcome to my world. This is part of our problem. And you know what? All those things may be good. All those things may be good in and of themselves. We're going to, well, so I think we ought to have a broad energy policy. I agree with a broad energy policy. But he doesn't agree with a broad energy policy. He has consistently traded green for jobs, green for growth. That's been a trade-off he's been willing to make. And I think labor, which has been historically kind of a democratic bastion, is losing patience. And these are high-paying, unionized jobs that are being put at risk. And they're high-paying, unionized jobs at the refinery level and at the pipeline construction level. I don't think.
Question.